The 62nd session of the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is currently underway in Geneva, where governments, the UN experts, and civil society are reviewing some of the most urgent human rights crises around the world. Among the key issues under scrutiny is Sudan, where the UN's International Fact-Finding Mission has warned that arbitrary detention, torture, and enforced disappearances are fueling a deepening protection crisis for civilians as the conflict enters now its fourth year. In its latest update to the Council, the mission says that both the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces continue to commit serious violations of international human rights and humanitarian law, with some of these acts potentially amounting to war crimes and crimes against humanity. Well, to unpack the latest findings and what they mean for accountability, civilian protection, and we're now joined by Professor Joy Ngozi Ezeilo, who's one of the 3 expert members of the International Fact-Finding Mission in Sudan. Professor, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
So this 62nd session of the Human Rights Council is currently underway at Geneva. From your perspective, what makes this session particularly significant?
Yeah, of course, they are really taxed with a very difficult and overwhelming task of dealing with a world that is so divided, a world that war is raging in various regions of the world, and some of them very, very intractable wars, like the one in Sudan, which is the world's most atrocious war yet, not receiving the kind of attention it requires. And so it is for them to ensure enforcement of human rights and international humanitarian law around the world. And of course, the contestations, especially around states that are claiming sovereignty and non-interference, and then also solidarity with themselves, especially for Africans that will say African solution for African problem. But we know this has not stopped the war in Sudan that is raging. Civilians, Sudanese are under siege, and Sudan is facing a rapidly escalating protection crisis marked by arbitrary detention, torture, enforced disappearances, and widespread violations committed by both Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and Rapid Support Forces, Rapid Support Forces, RSF. And it is for us as an independent international fact-finding mission that was set up by the United Nations to continue to document the violations of this international human rights and humanitarian law, preserve evidence, identify perpetrators for the purposes of accountability, and then look at issues of civilians, and civilian protection must be paramount. It is imperative. And both parties, as it were, are detaining civilians without legal basis, targeting anyone perceived as sympathetic to either of the sides, and including journalists, human rights defenders, humanitarian workers, political activists, community leaders, hospital workers, family members that are not even combatant. So movement has been effectively criminalized. As you move from point A to B, you are likely to be detained by either of the side that is in control. So civilians are really under pressure, not only to demonstrate loyalty, amidst even all the other economic survival issue, with the war displacing millions, killing people. You know what happened in El Fasher during the 62nd session of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. We also gave update on El Fasher, supplementing our earlier on February findings of hallmarks of genocide that happened. Up till now, there are missing persons, not just from El Fasher, Khartoum, around the country, that have not been found to be reunited with their family. And RSF, for example, is implicated in extortion and hostage taking. At times, they demand as high as 25 million Sudanese pounds for detainees' release. The humanitarian workers are also, they are also forcibly disappeared. enforced disappearance is rampant. And we know about 70 people that were arrested in El Janina this May 2026. They are still unaccounted for. So SAF also continue to target political opponents, including selective prosecution, lawyers, journalists, often also subjecting them to torture, coerced confession, unfair trials, even in exile, and they are sentencing people. So, and detention conditions for both sides, whether SAF, RSF, are inhuman, very inhuman, life-threatening, incompatible with human dignity. And what still? People don't have access. International organizations, civil society, and others, so that they can have access to the condition in which people are detained. So there is issue of overcrowding, lack of food, medical care, exposure to disease, and hospitals and infrastructure has also been targeted. And if you talk of sexual violence perpetrated, especially by RSF, against women and girls, you will see a deliberate, systematic use of sexual violence as a weapon of war. And that's very disturbing, especially in culture where open sexuality discussion is abhorred or suppressed. So these women are dying in silence. No one is even hearing them out. No one is profiling them. The issue of providing them the psychological, the support they need for recovery is not even there, because this is still a war situation. And humanitarian and human rights organizations, they are denied access to these detention facilities. And this is part of the call of the Independent Fact-Finding Mission, FFM Sudan, for which I'm one of the 3 experts, that we are calling for urgent and immediate end to arbitrary detention, release of all political detainees, human rights defenders, and grant full access to independent monitors, disclosure of detainees' whereabouts, and accountability, because this is very important. For us, the scale and gravity of this violation underscore the urgent need of accountability. And if you look at root causes of conflict in Sudan, you will see that lack of accountability and impunity that has endured is part of why we have this cycle of conflict in Sudan every time. It just continues to break out. So, and civilians continue to bear the brunt. Children are hearing airstrikes instead of lullabies. And it reminds me of myself as a toddler and a child of war, the then Nigeria Civil War and Biafra. You know, it's really sad. Education, people are not in school that they're supposed to be. And it has entered its 4th year. And the people of Sudan have endured the conflict, defined not only by violence on the battlefield, but by repression that has seeped into every aspect of civilian life. Movement has been criminalized, as you see in our report. Both warring parties are detaining individuals without legal basis. So Professor, we need to do more. International community need to do more.
And you know what? Your answer was so comprehensive that you've actually answered all my questions. And so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and giving us some very powerful insights about the crises that is Sudan that the world needs to be paying much more attention to. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. And history is watching us. The world should do more to end this impunity, end this war, and bring relief to Sudanese civilians caught in this battle. Thank you.
That was Professor Joy Ngozi Ezeilo, who's one of the 3 expert members of the International Fact-Finding Mission on Sudan, speaking to us about the latest findings from the UN Human Rights Council's 62nd session in Geneva and the situation on the ground in Sudan.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.